with real estate, it's location. Because even a little mistake can cost amazing amounts of money. But if you have a great location, it's like a natural hedge. It protects you.
Welcome to the Immigrant Doctor Podcast, a podcast for financially focused immigrant physicians and other medical professionals looking to learn investing in the U.S. market and achieving financial freedom. Join Avishkar, the Immigrant Doctor, as he talks to high achievers and go-getters who unravel their journeys, hardships, and successes, helping you to get your financial freedom. To learn more, go to theimmigrantdoctor.com.
So you heard part one last week, and this week we're on part two of my conversation with Shamaz about how money works. I'm very excited that you're back listening to this part of the conversation that we had. We had a lot of fun, and hopefully you can get some value from this. So let's talk about recessions and corrections. A lot of times we talk about these recessions, especially in the media. They really hype recessions, right? And for the last few months, if you look up any news channel, all they talk about is a recession is coming. When I was actually researching about recessions and corrections, I was really amazed because we go through this quite often, more often than we actually know about it. So let's talk about recessions and corrections, just so that people understand how they play into the stock market cycles and in economy in general, and how you look at it from an investment advisor perspective.
Yeah, so it's really hard to know what's going to happen, right?
Right.
Everybody pretends to know what's going to happen. I remember with the 2008 scenario, I thought that was going to happen in 2000.
Right.
And then
you were off only by 8 years or so, right?
Yeah, and for me, everyone says 2008. For me, it was 2005 when Bear Stearns went under, and I said, finally, it's happening. And so you think something's going to happen, and then it just rolls on, and then it doesn't happen until way later, or it happens way earlier than you think.
Right.
One thing I do know in the stock market, is when you're at the bottom of a recession, that's when the bull market starts. So quite oftentimes in the worst part of the stock market, that's when you need to get in to the market.
Well, I think it's important to also understand that, like people talk about this, you can never really time the market because you never know when the recession is going to hit, right? It can keep going down and down. But I think from a definition perspective, if I remember correctly, there's a specific definition for when it's called a correction and when it's called a recession.
Yeah, it's 22%. I believe that's could be wrong.
I believe that's I think it's like 20%.
Is it 20%? Yeah, down. Maybe it's 20%. I think there's some percentage like that, 20, 22, or maybe I use 22. But 20%, once you break that, then you're in a bear market officially. Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people don't understand that happens actually not hitting a dip by 20%. And I think correction is like 10%. Mm-hmm. But that dip happens every 2 to 3 years. Mm-hmm. So corrections happen more frequently than we know, but nobody talks about these corrections. But when the recession starts coming in, all the news channels are jumping onto this news about recession happening as if it's never happened in the past.
I know. It's amazing, isn't it? Hype. Yeah. Yeah.
So what asset classes perform well in recession? I mean, what are recession resistant? We keep talking about that, we want to take advantage of this recession. We're talking about this looming recession that's coming. The world is ending. Okay, what should people do? They have some money left on the side. Where should they put their money?
So for us, we're, I guess, technically a little more sophisticated. I don't consider it that. I think it's very simple. But what we like to do is actually go into positions writing covered calls. Have you heard about options?
Okay. No.
So options, you can buy a stock and limit your risk. Like you can buy a $5 option on Apple Computer, which is trading at 150 or something like that. I don't actually go into Apple very often recently, but
just an example, a hypothetical number.
Yeah, and And then if it goes against you, you can only lose $5. But with the stock market, you have the ability to, instead of buying that option, you can sell it.
Okay.
And you can set yourself up to go into those corrective states, right? So I can set myself up to buy Apple computer at $120 by selling the $120 call strike price. I know that's kind of like way out there.
Well, I think whatever you're talking about, I cannot understand a word of it. I think we will definitely need to do another episode on this, sort of like a masterclass on options.
Yeah. Yeah, so options are amazing if you sell them instead of buying them. If you sell options, which can be extremely risky, and everyone sells it that way, you collect the premium. But it's very interesting because 95% of all options expire worthless. That means if you bought it, you would lose money, right? 95% of the options, you lose money on them if you buy them.
Interesting.
So how about if you sell them?
You make money 95% of the times, I guess.
Yeah. And if I can also hedge the risk that options have, right? Like I can eliminate the risk of selling an option, because selling options is extremely dangerous. Why not do that? So what we do is we set ourselves up in this time with a lot of option plays to be able to not time the market, but get into stocks at deep discounts while making premiums on them at the same time. And that's what's amazing about the market. I love the market. I had a yoga teacher who was incredible, and he would say, just work with the basic, but if you perfect the basic, you'll become an expert. And
that's true.
And so the market is the same thing. If you can understand one basic thing and become an expert in that, you will become an expert. And that's what's so amazing about the stock market. I know a lot of people see it as intangible and they like the real estate. Part of the beauty of real estate is the market, because it creates the liquidity for that real estate investment. And how does it do that? Talk to me about that. How does the stock market play into the real estate? I think that's an interesting thought. And I mean, like, I'm making money in my W-2, right? Mm-hmm. Or say an investor's making money from the rents that they're collecting. How is that related to the stock market? Well, it's not, except that the mortgage-backed securities, right? So it's not exactly the stock market, but the liquidity in the exchanges for real estate is provided by selling those mortgages in the market. Oh,
so the banks are actually, that's a large chunk, because a lot of...
And retail investors. So you have a lot of retail, you have REITs and hedge funds who buy those mortgages. And they give the ability for investors in real estate to invest in real estate, because if not, the banks wouldn't be able to lend to them.
Interesting.
Or other companies.
And that's what's happening right now, is like banks are tightening up. They're not lending because of whatever else is going on in the world. And they form a large chunk of the money coming in to buy an asset. Yeah,
and right now in the markets, you have the largest cash just sitting on the sidelines waiting to invest for retail investors. Retail investors are today, it's a crazy, awesome time, because retail investors, not the middle and lower class, sadly, that's a different issue, I think, but the retail investors have more cash than ever in history. And for the first time in history, and this is new, this is like since 2020, it's a crazy thing that blows my mind, and I get all excited, my hair starts standing up, and I get all academic. And retail investors are bigger than institutional investors in the first time in history, in modern history. Wow. And so that's awesome. That's awesome to me. Yeah. I think, oh, wow. That means there's a chance. for the little guy to get ahead. Yeah.
I think that's what it is, right? There are these moments in history when wealth shifts hands. And that's why we say that now is the time for wealth to shift hands, or it's coming. It might take some time, maybe a few months, a couple of years. We don't know exactly when, but you got to be ready for those times with money in hand to deploy in the right asset so that you can make your riches when the time hits.
Yeah, just like 2008. And I think 2008 was an opportunity that was even bigger. It should have been even bigger than it was, pardon me. It should have been even bigger than it was. But because of the Federal Reserve printing money, they saved the banks. Mm-hmm. There should have been a bigger shift, a bigger turnover in wealth. And that's my only concern today. Like, what's going to happen? What are the powers that be are they going to do? Because they keep trying to stop the little guy from getting ahead.
Right.
At least that's my perspective. They want to keep the powers that be, the big banks, the too big to fail, in power with their money. They don't want them to fail.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then, what should people invest in? Say somebody has cash lying around. I think the question would be, what would be good hedges against the current inflation that we have and the recession that's coming up? What asset classes do you think are good? And again, I just want to preface this with the fact that this is not financial advice.
No.
This is just a discussion that we're having. I know that you do work. I think you do work as a financial advisor or whatever. But I
have the firm. Like all those licenses.
You're not a financial advisor for people who are listening here. So
no.
I don't think So I don't think this is financial advice, and I think just people should take it with a pinch of salt and understand that these are just very high-level discussions, and whatever nuances of their finances that they're going through, they will have to discuss with their, with the specialists that they're working with, their financial advisors, their CPAs, whatever. Let's dive back into this discussion because I'm really interested in knowing what your thoughts are. I've always heard that, multifamily is a good hedge against inflation and a good hedge against recession. But what about the other asset classes? What do you think?
Yeah, multifamily, I think, is an incredible hedge. And then when you're investing in the market, I think that commodity-based companies are an incredible place to put your money that are producing money.
Okay.
And also, companies like Microsoft, Apple, they're making huge amounts of money. And those assets will go up in value. If we go into an inflationary push, hyperinflation, something very aggressive, then companies will go up in value too.
Interesting.
Yeah. I think there's always that. The difference between property and the markets is property is less liquid. So you don't go through that drama of feeling the valuation and the devaluation of your property. Even though it is happening on a daily basis, you don't feel it, you don't see it. Because you can't sell it. Well,
if you buy it right, I don't think you need to sell it, right? I think that's the philosophy that I operate with, is that you buy it right, and I think it's essential to buy it right. It's essential to kind of do a deep underwrite, understand the nuances of the market, understand the factors that come into play before you make any purchase. Just because of the amount of risk and the amount of moving parts that are there. And so I would never want to sell a property if I buy it right.
Yeah, I had a banker, a mentor who I worked with, and he would always say, Shamaz, the difference between a good real estate purchase and a bad real estate purchase is 10 years. So patience is an incredible virtue in any investing, and usually with the stock market, patience is lost. That's why Warren Buffett is such a good example in that sense. And speaking, he's always talked about as the value investor, but he's actually the largest options writer in the market, and has been for like 40 years or 30 years, something.
That is interesting because I know that you had mentioned this to me when we were talking, and my mind was blown because all this while I've been thinking that he's a value investor. And I was reading this book called Invested, and basically I'm forgetting the author's name, but her dad used to work with Warren Buffett, and she kind of explains how Warren Buffett looks at the companies that he buys into, and so it kind of made sense to me because that's the way I look at real estate. And I was like, this makes so much sense to me. This is probably the right way to buy a company. And time and again, these quotes come up that he buys good companies at a fair price. Mm-hmm. And it takes a while for you to understand what that actually means. It means that you buy an asset that's going to perform, that you are seeing a track record of performance in, and you know that in the future, based on whatever they're doing, whether it's real estate, whether it's whatever company that they're, that's operating, how they're operating, understanding that before actually putting your money on it. So sort of like, betting on the jockey and understanding, okay, this is what they're planning to do, and I think that's what's gonna perform. Mm-hmm. That made sense to me. But then when you told me about the fact that he's an options trader, I was blown away. I was like, this is something nobody talks about.
Well, when you get premiums, there's a lot of dividend investors, but you write one call on Apple, and that's more than any dividend paying company could pay you. So, and some of these companies have options that are weekly. So every week you can actually write a call. Now that gets a little more dangerous, but imagine being able to produce massive premiums. So Warren Buffett will sell these leaps. They're actually not even options at this point because he'll sell them way out and collect huge amounts of cash.
Interesting.
Where does he get all his cash? A huge part of it comes in from those premiums that he sells
on options.
Like he'll sell puts way out on the S&Ps and just collect those premiums. I remember in 2008 I was looking at it and he had like $14 billion dollars in premiums collected, and what is so amazing about it is it's real cash that enters his account, and on the accounting, a mark-to-market accounting, it actually is a loss. It's counted as a loss. So that's all
interesting.
Yeah, so if he has he's worth 50 billion or 100 billion, he's actually worth another 20 billion because he has a loss on the books. It's incredible.
I think we're going to have to do another session on options because I think this is something that's so interesting. Not because I'm getting into options. I think it's just because it's going to be interesting for our listeners to know about what it is. I think it's important to have focus in what you're investing in, on what you're doing with your money, rather than going after every shiny object, because I believe that there's money to be made in every asset class. There's money to be made every which way. But if you keep hopping around from one to the next to the next, it's kind of becomes difficult.
Yeah, I mean, your knowledge in real estate is amazing. So I was impressed with how much legal knowledge and everything you have.
Thank you.
There, and it's great to have that detail. Great underwriting. For me,
and what I've realized is that not just that. I think what ends up happening is that just like, for example, you're so heavily invested in the stock market. Warren Buffett is in the stock market. It's about understanding where the market is going to move, or where you expect it to move based on the information that you have. And for that, you require that depth of knowledge in that specific industry. And for real estate, it's actually much more local, like having the local knowledge of what are the factors at play. Say, for example, in your market that you're investing in. For example, I'm investing in Columbus, Ohio, and Cincinnati right now. It's kind of understanding what are the local factors at play. What's going to get me the advantage in that market that somebody who's coming in new or somebody who's not been in that market for a while or not been in real estate for a while will not know about these things. And I think that's what creates the advantage, and that's where the magic happens, I think. Folks, I just wanted to remind you, if you haven't done that already, head on over to www.theimmigrantdoctor.com. I have created a free video resource for you guys. It's a small course that I've created on investing in real estate. It's not very extensive, but it just gives you a flavor of what investing in real estate looks like, so that you can get started, get more comfortable with the terms around real estate, and get more comfortable with some of the facets of real estate. So go to www.theimmigrantdoctor.com to download this free resource.
Yeah. Having a deep knowledge of location, right? With real estate, it's
right.
location. Because even a little mistake can cost amazing amounts of money.
Right.
But if you have a great location, it's like a natural hedge. It protects you because it's worth it. It's like, oh, well, I am willing to pay more money for this location because it's going to be worth more money as time goes on. And I think, I love real estate too, and it's a passion of mine. I think the difference between real estate, and some people have it just depends on your mentality, right?
Right.
So real estate is about land, and it's tangible, and you can see it, and that excites people. That really excites people. But for me, I love people. And the stock market speaks of people because I know who's running that company and I can believe in that person. And I choose to believe in people. Because what makes locations, what makes everything happen, what makes the world move is people.
It's people.
And so I believe in people. And I don't know what the Federal Reserve is going to do, and I don't know what the governments are going to do, and all these. That's the biggest risk for me in investing in anything is the government. Right. Is I believe in the unyielding spirit of people, and I think that's what draws me to the stock market. And the stock market has a lot of break points or places where you can grow. And you can start very small. Like with $5,000, you can start.
Right. The barrier to entry is like very low.
Yeah, and then growth, like the difference between investing $100,000 and $1 million is massive difference. And then the difference between $1 million and $10 million is massively different. And then 10 million to $1 billion is totally different. So you have all of this world of creativity and learning to do as you go on investing in the stock market. In real estate, you really need there's some special people out there who can really make things happen, in every area. But from my perspective, to really make real estate move, you need $10 million, especially today with the high interest rates. You're like, oh, that's a lot of money. It's like, where do you get $10 million?
Well, I think I would differ in my opinion about
that. Yeah, let's hear about that.
So I think, it's funny. I was reading another book, and what really clicked was the fact of how we look at money. Money is, and it kind of ties to what we were talking about, the flow of money. I think looking at money as a commodity changes the perspective of everything, right? So if people want to invest in a quality asset, and also kind of ties down to what you're talking about, ties to what we're talking about, investing in people. I want to be that vehicle for people to invest in quality assets. So it's kind of like you have the money lying around, invested in quality assets. Now, it may be stocks, it may be real estate, but it has to be a quality asset that you're investing in, regardless. And so So it's, I know that, leverage is something that's becoming a little tight right now, but I think that's where understanding the market, understanding the big players that are going to define how you move, where you move, and pivoting according to that because of the knowledge that you have is important in helping other people invest in these different asset classes. For me, I chose real estate because that's a basic human need. And I was very particular about why I chose multifamily and why I didn't go for single family and why I didn't go for short-term rentals, another shiny object people talk about. For me, I wanted to invest in multifamily because everybody needs a home to live in.
Yeah.
I don't care if AI takes over. I don't care what happens to industries. People will still need a place to stay. They've always needed a place to stay. They will always need a place to stay. So for me, that's a big hedge against any downturn in any industry.
Yeah.
Right. So for me, that was the underpinning ideology of focusing on multifamily.
Yeah.
I don't want to focus on short-term rentals. Yes, the returns are phenomenal, and if you know what you're doing, you can really make a lot of money. But I don't want to do that because that's not a necessity, and I wanted to focus on necessity rather than a want. So focusing on need rather than a want. And so thinking about it from that perspective.
The new Warren Buffett.
And thinking about it, from the perspective of the investor, that you need to invest in quality assets because I'm an investor too. So I will not go and buy something for cheap just because it's cheap. I want it to perform for me as an investor. Right?
Yeah.
So understanding that, I think, is important in any field, whether it's stocks, whether it's real estate. And I just choose to focus on real estate.
Yeah. No, those are great points. Those are great points. I mean, really, money is an input, really. That's all it is. And it's garbage because of the devaluation that's happening as governments just print more and more of it. Then it becomes worthless.
I think you can either be a part of the system and see how you can use the system to your benefit, or you can just be against the system. And by what I mean by that is, if you're a part of the system, well, then use the arbitrage model that the whole world is using to make money, or just save your money and then it gets devalued. I mean, you really choose what you want to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, the system is rigged, so why not use it to your advantage?
Exactly.
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 And the more I can do that, the more you can do that for people, the better.
Right.
The better. Yeah.
Well, Shamaz, why did you come to the real estate conference? I'm very curious. You're so savvy at stocks and options. What made you come to the real estate conference?
So we do investments in real estate, just also, and I've had this huge desire to get more heavy into it. Since I came back to the States, I was living abroad, so it wasn't. You have to be here to really do it, right?
Right.
And my wife loves real estate, so I wanted to take her to the conference. I wanted her to learn, to be part of it, to make that push in real estate investing. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. And if people want to get in touch with you, how can they do that?
How can they do that? Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I have an email.
Sure. Where can they reach you if they want to reach you and discuss about, say, investing with your firm or whatever? It's
snm@cleartg.com. That's my email.
snm@cleartg.com?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's correct.
Sounds good. I will put that in the show notes as well. And,
Well, I'm looking forward to people investing in your fund. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm excited about this too, because I'm very bullish on the Columbus market right now and the Cincinnati market, just because of what we're seeing over there.
That's Intel, right? Or is that?
Well, it's not just Intel. I think it's a whole perspective of what they're looking at, and we the way we look at the market, the Columbus market, it's interesting what's happening in that market. And so I am, me and my team, we are kind of focusing on what we can do. Obviously, at this time, the inventory is a little low because everything was bought out in the last few years. I think there are going to be some great opportunities coming along in the coming months, which are going to be super lucrative. And so we're trying to position ourselves in the way that we go with the flow and we understand what the market needs, and then we deliver that to the market.
Yeah, it's going to be a good market. And I think you're right. There's going to be a lot of blow-ups on those, on the lending. And what are they going to do?
So I'm always constantly planning, I'm like always thinking of what to do next. And it's like playing that mental game of chess, so to say, of understanding, well, if these pawns move in this direction, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. It's kind of like understanding the different levers that move and how they move and how they would influence our decision making, and having a decision ready beforehand for what's going to happen.
Have you ever heard about note purchasing?
I have, but I haven't looked at it.
Because sometimes maybe that's a good strategy in your market too. Just go find the assets you want and find out who owns the note. Buy the note instead.
I don't want to buy notes. I want to buy real assets.
Well, see, because if you own the note when it comes due, or if it goes leveraged, then you can take over the asset.
I haven't looked at that strategy yet. I think it's too much for me. I like to keep it simple. I think in anything in life, simplicity is key. Like, you can make things as complex as possible, but I think going with what you know and using that to your advantages is the key.
It is, yeah, totally. I agree. Like my yoga teacher. So.
Listen, I get money, I buy a building, that's the end of it. I don't go chasing notes. That's what I do. Well, I think this was a very fun conversation, Shamaz. I think we should have another conversation on options, because that is something that I find very interesting and very intriguing, especially because we're talking about the stock market and how it's related to real estate and how everything is connected. I think it's going to be an important discussion to have, understanding especially what you told me about how Warren Buffett invests his money and made his riches. All this while I was thinking that it was just these value plays that he did and he made his money. And here I am being told that no, that was just a small piece of it. I want to know what else he did.
Well, yeah, selling options is interesting because it's kind of like selling an insurance policy, right? So if you
I think we're going to get into it more.
Different.
Yeah.
But boy, hard conversation. I'm open, but how do you explain it without charts and graphs? It's kind of I don't know.
I think we can plan that.
We can plan it. Okay.
We can plan it. We'll plan it and we'll do it. I think let's just do it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Okay. It sounds great. And any pointers or tips you have for me, I'll be happy to receive them too. So see if we can get the cameras better.
Well, it was nice having you on today, and this has been a very fun conversation, and I look forward to having another episode with you.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Folks, some of my guests may actually have some mentorship programs. They may have some deals that they're working on, and you might get interested in working with them. But please bear in mind that I haven't done any due diligence on what they are offering. And you should do your own due diligence before you start working with them. Having said that, these are very high quality guests that I'm trying to bring on so that they can provide good value to you. And, they're hardworking individuals and they have integrity when they work, but you should definitely do your own due diligence. I haven't done that due diligence on, what their programs are, what their deals are. So please do your due diligence. I don't want to be held liable for anything that they are offering and you join that program or that deal with them. because you heard it on my podcast.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Immigrant Doctor Podcast. If you would like to learn more, head to www.theimmigrantdoctor.com. See you again soon on another episode and another amazing journey.